16 years ago. That to me is so meaningful, and that's about loving the work enough to get to a point where that deeper meaning is tangible. I've been writing for over half of my life. Getting published is hard work, and I love talking about it online. So if you're interested in learning about the writing life, you want memoir writing tips, anything, check me out on my socials in the description and in the link in any of my social media accounts. But if you haven't checked out my book yet, please check it out. I teach writing, and one of the biggest things I try to do as an instructor and someone online is to debunk romanticism of writing. I have some cool things to show you in this box from the past 18 years, and this is the box of all of the writing things I've saved over the years. And so I'm sure there's some stuff in here where I'm like gonna be shocked by, but we're gonna go through and see what is in here. Oh, wow. Oh, oh my God, I haven't looked through this in so long. Oh my God. My writing journey to you. I started writing when I was 12. I got really deep into fan fiction and writing short stories online. Just fell in love with it. And I studied creative writing in college. And I've always been a very tactile person. I've always been very memory oriented. And it's just really cool to go back. And even some of the things in here, like this is a journal I used to read all the time in Seattle that got me hip to like anarchism and starting to study it. So this is even cool to see. What is this? There's like different projects all crammed in here. I should probably organize this. Are different drafts of edits of my book. Basically, whenever I finish a first draft, I like to put it into a PDF, send it to Staples, and then print it off bound like this. And this is really cool because once you kind of hold your book in your hand and you get a sense of it, you can look at all the different pages, but you can even see I have like things marked up on the front. I have all sorts of annotations on the inside. This edit was before I changed the name of the book, so this had to be pre-2021. So this is probably like 3 or 4 years old. I can see like the different things that I'm crossing out and the different notes I made in there. And it's cool to see this go from this to this to this. Wow. Oh my gosh. And I have numerous ones. Like I did this numerous times because over the years, these edits, this seems to be like more just like straight grammar. Like you can see I'm editing a lot less on the page here. There's less things that I'm writing in. Wow. And then like, I also love writing on the back of pages and being like, okay, I'm going to add this to that chapter or add it to the other part of the other side of the page. What else do we have in here? Oh, and this was an outline I wrote for my memoir. I wanted to write outline of all the different chapters, and I wonder if you can see it, but yeah, you can see the outline. Oh my God. Things that I was studying: Fugitive Justice, The Appeal of the Slave by Saidiya Hartman. I was reading a lot about Afro-pessimism while I was writing this book, so it makes sense that a lot of these things are in here. Honestly, I hide stuff wherever I can because you don't need it. What is this notebook for? So this is another notebook of different editing notes. Since I usually take notes in a notebook or in my notes app on my phone. And as I mentioned in another video, I've been taking a lot of notes on my iPad, which if you have an iPad, I'd highly recommend that because it is a good way to have a very tactile form taking notes, but it also is very visual. Okay, what else do you have? Ooh, I think I know what this is. Wow. Is a script that I wrote a few years ago. Kind of started loving literature or writing when I was 12. When I get a story idea, it usually flashes in my head as a movie trailer. And I also really love film. I love horror movies. I love weird movies. I love foreign films. I love thrillers. And when I was going to college, I was considering studying film. So I applied to a university for film and I didn't get in. Tended to have friends that were photographers or videographers. And a few years after college, I kept thinking like, I want to write a movie. And I ended up, when I did my first artist residency in 2019, I said, I'm going to write a page a day for a screenplay. And then I'm just going to keep going for it. And this is the first screenplay I ever wrote. It's called Eddie in Jamaica. It's about a boy who his best friend has just passed away right before he graduates high school. And he gets sent back to Jamaica to basically process his grief and deal with like how he's kind of spiraling, and then he ends up having a queer love affair. And I honestly haven't read this in so long, so I might put this aside and maybe try to read it sometime over the next month or so. I think if you're into straight kind of narrative prose that's on the page, sort of novel based, it can be weird to write a screenplay, but I like how sparse the language is, which makes it easier to write. So if you're someone who's newer to writing and you want to dig into storytelling, but you don't want to take too long writing full stories, maybe dabble into screenwriting as a way to kind of understand story structure, characterization, etc. Last year, I wrote a short film, lead acted in it, and produced it with my friends. And now I'm in works to kind of talk about other things that I want to do. So it's really cool to see this and to know like something I worked on back then led to some of the skill sets that I'm utilizing now. Even like acting. I took an acting class in college. Like but I acted in a film last year. So my short film script. Okay, other things in here. Let's see. Oh my God. Oh, these are, so I went to Ohio University. These are some protest flyers from that time. More notes from my book. This is notes from my novel that I'm currently writing. These are newspapers from when I was in university. This newspaper is 10 years old. And this is like documenting my student organizing. Like I just have a bunch of these. This is from a walkout protest that I planned in honor of Michael Brown. This is a newspaper I was featured in 2020 for the George Floyd protests. You can you see me on here? You can see me. Where am I? You can see me in the bottom left corner. Can you see me there? More newspapers from college. Yeah, like I also love saving these because I don't really read newspapers, and I know that these documents are going to matter to me like when I have kids, or if I ever want to like archive my life differently or think about things or write another memoir. I told myself I'd write a memoir every 10 years, so it's cool to have these as documentation. 16 years ago. This is a newspaper I was the editor for 16 years ago. And on the front page is have some fun in the sun in the summer. And so I talk about summer activities you can do. Oh my God. Okay, how many pieces did I write in here? I was the student editor, so I wrote one in the beginning. Another one here on Langston Hughes. Oh my gosh, I was writing about Langston Hughes back then. This is honestly sort of like low-key when my writing career started, 2008. I'm thinking back to this version of myself, and I constantly think about this all the time. The life that I'm living right now is exactly the life that this younger version of me probably would have hoped for. So it's cool to, oh my God. Oh, loving writing so much, it being so joyous, not having it be attached to anything career related or any future desires. I just love practicing storytelling, sharing short stories with my friends. And so it's just so sweet to remember that time. And this is another wild artifact. This is a book that I wrote. I printed off a copy of this. And I actually did another video on this channel where I read excerpts of this, but basically I wanted to write a gender swapped version of Twilight. So this is about a boy named Charlie who has a girl in his grade who is acting weird, and then they end up together, and then the vampire police want to stop them. And I actually wrote a sequel and printed off the sequel, but I don't have the physical copy of the sequel. I have the sequel like somewhere on a hard drive, but this is the only physical copy from this series, and I planned for it to be a trilogy. And this first book, I think, was around 90,000 words. The second one was around 120. And I started the third one, but I never finished it. I never finished the third book. And it's not like I regret that. It's just more like, oh, I wish I'd written a trilogy. Like, I've always wanted to write a series. 2009 or something. So this book is like 15 years old. Oh my God. Okay, and last but not least is I have notes from current edits of a current book that I'm working on. So I started this book in 2020, and some other backstory. I actually wrote this book 10 years ago when I was in college, and then I put it aside. And then when the pandemic rolled around, I was really ready to work on fiction again. And so I started working on this book, and I essentially rewrote it all the way through again. And since 2020, I've probably been revising it, and I've done probably a good 4 or 5 solid revisions. I'm at the very end of a 4 or 5 month long revision, and I have all those videos on my channel if you want to check those out. But this is a coming of age. It's set during the 80s, and It's about a boy basically contending with his survivor's guilt after his older brother passes away, and how learning to trust community helps him survive the structural and personal wrongs that he's facing as a boy in the South, as a queer person, as someone against the backdrop of the AIDS crisis, exploring what the other side of grief is, which is grief can bring you closer to life. Actually in this one, I seemed like I stopped doing as much editing, or I didn't have as much edits to do. These have a lot more edits on them. These are loose pages. I think this is an earlier draft of this book, and that's a later draft. It's wild to see everything like this again, and to have a box of my writing alongside this in my own office. I want to talk about some 3 critical takeaways for what it takes to be a writer, because it might be cool for you to like see all that and be like, oh my gosh, you've written so much over the years. But I look at this box and I see all the work I've done, the hours and hours and hours I spent on my laptop as a teenager, the hours of writing I've spent in college, the hours and hours of writing after college, of reading. And this box is a portion of all the work I've done, all the research. And it's wild to think about that this isn't even everything. There is so much more. I've written poetry, short stories, short films, articles, essays. It just reminds me that it's the behind the scenes work that counts. Was a writer as a career. I feel like people just kind of saw it as a hobby, but I viewed it as something even more than a hobby. It for me felt like was one of the things in life that I wanted to commit myself to prove that I cared about, to prove that I could be good at it, to prove that I could move other people and myself through this craft. If I don't write for a week or 2 or 3, I usually feel that itch to get back to it. When it's hard to get back to, I remember all the times I could have written, and I wish I'd written sooner. And this isn't necessarily like a guilting myself thing. It's just more of like a going back to my true north. I really believe like if I didn't care as much about writing as I do, I wouldn't have written all these books. I wouldn't have written movies and scripts and entire books. I wouldn't have written 5 books in high school. You have to care about it enough to sit down and do the work when it's awkward, when you're busy, when other people are distracting you, when you're upset. Commitment is how you build a body of work, and the body of work is how you figure out what the meaning of your art is. And it's what you should really be committed to before anything else, because it's not always going to feel good when you're making art. The second takeaway is you have to love your stories even when others don't. When I was in middle school, I had a best friend who actually wrote in that newspaper that I showed you. This was the first kind of toxic frenemy I ever had that I realized, and he would constantly read my short stories and talk shit about them and laugh at me. And then eventually when I started writing for that newspaper, he asked me for writing advice. And if I look back at my writing career, there are so many times where other people tried to sow doubt in me or told me that I needed to write in a different way or wasn't doing it how they could imagine. And I'm so glad that I rightfully took advice when I needed to. But more than anything, I realized I know what I'm trying to do, or at least I know what I would like to try to do. And I trust the ethos, the drive, the motivation of my stories. And it's almost the first rule that makes the second rule matter. Like you have to do the behind the scenes work to build that body of work, to then have enough work to derive meaning from and to be validated by. Like it's not the outside world or gatekeepers or other people that can tell you that your work is good. It's the amount of commitment you put into it and the level of passion that you have for the themes and the meanings and the philosophical questions that you're exploring. And that is what's going to make you love something. When you stumble upon a moment with a character that symbolizes some huge, painful, beautiful idea you've had about life that's guided you, and now it's on the page for you to distinguish and for someone else to distinguish. That to me is so meaningful, and that's about loving the work enough to get to a point where that deeper meaning is tangible. So you have to love it before anyone else does. And then the last tip is discomfort means you're evolving. I think so many people can look at this box and all these writings and be like, oh my gosh, you were just editing and I bet it was so cool and I would write a book one day. Every single story I've written and have taken time to edit has beaten my ass mentally. My first book challenged me in so many ways. I had to figure out what I wanted to be honest about, what was too painful to write about, how to be real about things that were difficult for me that I hadn't even articulated in my life to other people. I had to figure out how to distill research into tangible prose. I had to figure out how to mix journalistic with cultural, with emotional styles of writing. And I had to contend with my own sense of my mortality and how that factored into my body of work. For my current novel that I'm writing now, I've been contending a lot with the aftermath of grief, which is this first book. My memoir is kind of about how do you contend with grief while it's an active force in your life. And I feel like this memoir is about how do you contend with grief when it's time to leave it behind and to figure out what is next. In the past few years, I've lost my grandmother, my writing mentor, a close friend. The state of the world is just becoming even more challenging. So sometimes diving into these dark topics and areas of writing can be difficult, but my commitment to them has also shown me there's a reason you're writing about these things. There's things you have to learn, and the amount of time you spent with it, the questions that you're asking, and this discomfort is a signifier of that. When you're uncomfortable and you're pushing through it, it usually means you're getting to a place you haven't been before. Please find me on social media and follow me online. And most importantly, check out my Patreon where I post early access to these videos. So check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/PRShakur. I hope this video maybe inspires you to get to doing your work today and to commit to it, do the behind the scenes work, find the meaning, because maybe one day you'll be published too.